NCAA Men's Basketball Power Rankings. Tennessee stays at no. 1 on their calendars, or added an alert to their phone, or some other modern-day reminder. It looked to be one of the best days of non-conference basketball in some time, with ranked team versus ranked team matchups all over the schedule. And though the slate has lost some of its luster because of a few early results, it's still going to shake up the power rankings as we inch toward full-fledged conference play. These 4 teams could see the biggest change next week. UConn and Gonzaga. The best game of the day takes place in New York City. Gonzaga still has a game against UCLA after Christmas, but this is one of its last chances at a marquee win this season. UConn has responded well after its 3-game losing streak in Maui, but a win here would be massive entering conference play. Illinois. The Illini have been on the verge of a statement win throughout the early season, falling short against Alabama and then losing in overtime to Northwestern. What better way to announce your arrival onto the national stage than by beating no. 1 Tennessee and playing the game on your home court? UCLA. The Bruins are in the midst of a 3-week gauntlet. They won at Oregon last weekend and now face Arizona in Phoenix this weekend and still have North Carolina and Gonzaga on the schedule for December. If the Bruins beat their former Pac-12 rival in a shooter road game, they'll be a factor moving forward. Though Chaz Lanier has earned plaudits for his scoring exploits as one of the best transfers in the country, Zakai Ziegler is playing at an All-American level and has once again been a catalyst for the Volunteers. Since turning over the ball 11 times in a road win at Louisville on November 9, Ziegler is averaging 8.0 assists and just 2.3 turnovers, while also scoring 11.0 points and racking up 2.2 steals. Miles Kelly is proving to be the missing piece for Auburn, a wing with size who can shoot from the perimeter. The Georgia Tech transfer was productive the past couple of seasons for the Yellow Jackets. He has slotted into the Auburn starting lineup and been a huge asset from 3. He has made multiple threes in 5 of his past 6 games, made at least 4 threes in 3 games, and is shooting 49% from beyond the arc on more than 5 attempts per game. What's different about this season's Iowa State team compared with the past couple of years? From a numbers perspective, it's clearly on the offensive end. The Cyclones rank 6th in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, and they're scoring 1.24 points per possession. Though their awful non-conference schedule has provided a boost to their numbers in the past, that's not entirely the case this season. 2 of their 3 best offensive performances of the season came against Dayton and Colorado. With Lemont Butler out because of an ankle injury and Kerr Kriisa sustaining a foot injury that will sideline him indefinitely, Coach Mark Pope doesn't have many point guards on his roster. But Jackson Robinson took on much of the playmaking and ball-handling duties down the stretch against Gonzaga and started at the point against Colgate on Wednesday. There were some ups and downs, but he had help from the rest of the rotation. 5 Kentucky players had multiple assists, and the team's turnover rate was its lowest of the season. After a couple of quieter weeks, in which Cam Jones scored 14 points or fewer in 3 of 4 games, and was outplayed by Keshon Gilbert in a loss to Iowa State, the senior guards player of the year candidacy got back on track in a big way against Wisconsin. Jones finished with 32 points, 6 assists, and 4 steals, making 3 3-pointers. The shooting is key. He was 4 for 16 from 3 in his previous 5 games. Entering the season, Con Newpel had generated a considerable amount of hype. NBA scouts were talking about him, and he had moved into the top 10 of mock drafts. Then he scored 22 points in the season opener against Maine. It has been more uneven since then, especially when it comes to shooting against tough opponents. In games against Kentucky, Kansas, and Auburn, He's just 1 for 17 from 3. On the plus side, he has found other ways to contribute, scoring in double figures in 2 of those games and dishing out 8 assists against the Jayhawks. The addition of Chris Blood to Alabama's rotation should be a huge boost, especially after the season-ending injury to Latrell Wrightsell. Youngblood shared AAC Player of the Year honors last season at South Florida, averaging 15.3 points and shooting 41.6% from 3. He's 6'4" and 225 pounds, and will add some physicality and toughness on the perimeter, which should help a defense that has struggled mightily at times this season. Though we won't get a true gauge for Florida's ceiling until SEC play, the Gators face the 2 toughest games of their non-conference schedule in an 80-hour span this weekend into next week. They start with Arizona State on Saturday in Atlanta, before traveling to Charlotte to face North Carolina. The Sun Devils and Tar Heels need a statement performance, for different reasons, but Florida should remain unbeaten. How will Gonzaga respond after blowing a lead to Kentucky, and then traveling across the country to face UConn at the Huskies' third home, Madison Square Garden? The three-point battle will be key. UConn ranks in the top 40 nationally in three-point attempt rate, making nearly 37% of its threes, and has made double-digit threes 5 times this season. Gonzaga is at the opposite end, ranking no. 306 in percentage of points from threes, and the Bulldogs are shooting only 33.7%. But the Zags are third in three-point defense, while UConn is no. 325. Nate Bittle has had a fascinating career arc in Eugene. He came out of high school as a 5-star prospect, but struggled to get on the floor as a freshman. After showing flashes over the next couple of years, he suffered a broken wrist, which stunted his junior season. But now, as a 4th-year player, the 7-footer is breaking out. He had 22 points and 10 boards in the loss to UCLA, and is averaging 14.4 points and 9.1 rebounds, with 3 double-doubles. Kansas had its 2 worst offensive performances of the season in last week's 2 losses to Creighton and Missouri, while also allowing at least 1.04 points per possession in both games. The issues at both ends happened in different ways. Creighton hit 12 three-pointers, while Missouri got to the free throw line 31 times. At the other end, Creighton did a terrific job neutralizing Hunter Dickinson, while Missouri forced 22 turnovers. Out the door goes the 2-time Consensus Player of the Year. In steps another All-American candidate without missing a beat. Trey Kaufman-Renn is obviously a completely different player than Zach Edey, but it's incredibly impressive how good he has been from the moment the season began. He started every game for the Boilermakers a year ago, but was an ancillary option. This season, Kaufman-Renn has scored at least 14 points in every game, has 4 20-point games, and had his best outings against Alabama, Ole Miss, Maryland, and NC State. The big key for Ole Miss entering the season was whether the Rebels' defense could improve. Last season, Ole Miss didn't have anything resembling a typical Chris Beard defense. The Rebels ranked 12th in the SEC, and no. 141 nationally, in adjusted defensive efficiency, allowing nearly 1.15 points per possession. For comparison, Beard never ranked lower than 18th in KenPom's adjusted defensive efficiency in his previous 5 seasons. It's getting better, despite struggling against Purdue, especially when it comes to forcing turnovers and blocking shots, which the Rebels rank in the top 15 nationally in both categories. Entering this season, Miles Byrd had played 35 games over 2 years at San Diego State, starting 0 and scoring in double figures twice. And now the 6'7" Byrd is one of the biggest breakout players in the country. He's scored in all but 2 games this season, including 16 points against Creighton and 18 points against Houston. Bird also went for 19 points and 4 three-pointers in Wednesday's win over Cal Baptist. It wouldn't be a surprise to see the left-hander play himself onto NBA draft boards given his size, shot-making, and two-way ability. It's understandable why efficiency-based metrics love Houston. The Cougars entered the season with terrific priors, and their 3 losses this season have been by a combined 13 points, with 2 coming in overtime. But how good is Kelvin Sampson's team? Their best wins so far are over a Marcus Burton-less Notre Dame team and a Butler group that just lost at home to North Dakota State. And we likely won't find out about Houston for another 6 weeks, as the Cougars have a friendly, in Big 12 terms, start to conference play. They don't play a top 25 team until visiting Kansas on January 25. Clemson gets another test this weekend against Memphis, but it also gives us a chance to see the Tigers' elite defense against a talented offensive unit. Clemson has held 9 of its 10 opponents to fewer than 1 point per possession this season, with Boise State team to surpass that mark, and the only team to beat Clemson so far. The Tigers limit fast break points and second chance points, forcing teams to make plays in the half court. Memphis has the guards to do just that, which makes Saturday intriguing. While Texas A&M's offensive rebounding has been paramount to its success this season, the Aggies rank first in the country for the second season in a row in offensive rebounding percentage. Their most telling stat might be free throw rate. According to Ivan Moya, A&M is 5-0 with a margin of victory of 18.6 points when its free throw rate is 34.8% or higher. When it's less than 34.8%, they're 3-2 and the average margin of victory drops to 1.8 points. Despite the way last season ended, there was some hope that former Georgia Tech transfer Jalen Moore could carry his strong finish to the campaign over to this season. He scored in double figures in 10 of his last 12 games, averaging 15.5 points and 8.8 boards in his last 4 games. And Moore has been even better this season, scoring at least 20.6 times after hitting that mark just twice in the first 3 years of his college career. He's averaging 18.2 points and 6.3 boards. The Huskies let the dynasty is over talk last about a week before putting together as strong of a 2-game bounce-back as they could have, beating Baylor without Alex Caraban, and then going on the road to knock off Texas by 11. Caraban's return was huge, as he posted the first double-double of his career against Texas, finishing with 21 points and 11 rebounds. Dan Hurley also received really good mileage from Samson Johnson and Taris Reed in both games. Josh Hubbard burst onto the scene last season as one of the most exciting freshmen in the country, moving into the starting lineup mid-season and putting up big numbers. This season, Hubbard is as electric as he was last season, but his numbers are up across the board, and he's far more efficient than a year ago. He's averaging 19.0 points, shooting better than 43% from 3, and has total 31 assists to just 3 turnovers. Could the long-awaited Xavier Booker breakout be upon us? The former top 10 recruit failed to carve out a consistent role for most of his freshman campaign, and started the first 3 games of this season before moving back to the bench following a scoreless outing against Kansas. But he has now scored in double figures in 3 straight games. 12 points and 7 rebounds against North Carolina in Maui, 11 points against Minnesota, and then 11 points and 6 rebounds against Nebraska. As mentioned earlier, UCLA is in the midst of a 5-game stretch that will give us an indication of where the Bruins might stand in the Big Ten pecking order. But Mick Cronin's team has already turned its season around following a surprising loss to New Mexico in the second game of the season. That game saw the team turn it over 21 times and shoot 5 for 23 from 3, the worst marks of the campaign in both categories. Since then, according to Bartlett.com, the Bruins are shooting better than 37% from 3 and have a top 30 turnover rate in the country. As we wrote in Wednesday's freshman rankings, guard Kasparas Jakušionis has taken his game to an entirely different level over the last couple of weeks. Over his last 4 games, a stretch that includes matchups against Arkansas, Northwestern, and Wisconsin, Jakušionis is averaging 22.0 points, 7.0 rebounds, and 5.3 assists, while shooting nearly 56% from three-point range. Saturday brings a very difficult test in Tennessee's Zakai Zeigler. Jeremy Roach has missed the last 2 games after suffering a concussion in Baylor's loss to UConn, which has forced a pair of freshmen to shoulder more responsibility. VJ Edgecombe has been more assertive on the offensive end against Abilene Christian and Norfolk State, totaling 30 points, 15 rebounds, 7 assists, and 7 steals, and shooting 60% from the field. Classmate Robert Wright Ii moved into the starting lineup in Roach's place and just had 16 points and 13 assists against Norfolk. Yes, we're aware Memphis just lost by 13 at home to Arkansas State, but this is still a team with neutral court wins over UConn and Michigan State, as well as a home victory over Missouri. And now the Tigers have a huge 4-game stretch before conference play begins, and their opportunities to add significant wins essentially disappears. They go to Clemson this weekend, Virginia next week, then return home for games against Mississippi State and Ole Miss.